Hello and good morning to Michael Westcott. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Dan. I'm absolutely fantastic, thank you.
I want to ask you, Michael, if people say to you now, what do you do? Because I've had a look at your LinkedIn profile and you've got either co-founder, board director of CloserStill and co-chair of Torquay United. What do you say to them? Which one comes out first?
Well, my day job is absolutely closer still,
Yeah,
and everyone knows I was around since day one at Closer Still as we built the business. Probably more latterly, probably since around 2015, I've tended to focus exclusively around corporate development, which is finding new opportunities for the group, probably in either new sectors or new geographies. And very much I would sort of set up the initial M&A function, and probably M&A has been quite a big focus for the group over the last 5 or 6 years, particularly since
sure.
Providence came in with us at the end of 2018. So as the business has grown, as the M&A function has grown, we've got a bigger and bigger team, and I help Alex and his team in the M&A function and work very closely with Gareth and the senior leadership team, looking for new opportunities and also working with all the new businesses that have joined the Close Still family over the last few years and helping them bed in, look for new ideas and new ways to grow their business.
Sure. Thank you. So you're still very much a CloserStillian, though we are going to talk about your recent venture and foray into the wonderful world of football club ownership with Torquay in a minute. Just want to roll all the way back, Michael. Always interested to understand the backgrounds of my guests and how that sort of influenced their career and where they are today. And I know we said off camera beforehand that you've just returned home. It'd be interesting to understand where your story started, your sort of upbringing, and how that led to your career within the events industry.
Yeah, I'm speaking to you from South Devon in the West Country, and I started life off as I wanted since the age of 15. All I ever wanted to be was a journalist.
Okay.
And so I was very, very focused on that. And in fact, at the age of 15, I literally went to the local evening newspaper and knocked on the door and said, what do I have to do to work here? And made a bit of a nuisance of myself and just used to turn up every day and make tea. And this is back in the 80s, and you could do that back then, and it
Yeah.
wasn't weird. And then they started getting sick of seeing me around during school holidays and stuff, and actually started giving me stuff to do, like writing up captions for wedding photographs for the local paper, or rewriting the Women's Institute reports, or whatever it was. And then one thing led to the other, and I developed a real passion. And I always had a bit of a curiosity about people and about stuff and how things worked. And I just felt that was my natural calling. And after A levels, which I struggled through, and because family life wasn't massively settled at home, so I found it was quite a bumpy ride academically for me. And then ultimately, the newspaper clearly thought I had some promise as a local reporter, and sent me to journalism school for a year. Got my diploma, which you needed to have back then when journalism was a quote unquote profession with standards. And then came back and did my sort of indentured training for a couple of years. And then, about around the age of 20, left the area and strapped a backpack on my back in 1988 and headed to Asia, where I
Oh,
stayed
wow.
for 16 years.
Wow. Why Asia?
This was at the time that the trade unions and Margaret Thatcher were having words, let's say, that my dream was to get to Fleet Street. And at that point, to get to Fleet Street, I would have been going to work under police escort, having rocks thrown at us by print unions and called scabs. And that was the point where I kind of felt like the dream was shattered.
Right.
And so I decided to literally leave the country. And I was headed to Sydney to start a job as a sub editor on the Sydney Morning Herald, and never made it. and ended up in Indonesia and doing some journalism work and working for the French news agency and stuff like that. And so I started resumed my journalism career in Asia, and then suddenly, as things progressed, found myself falling more into publishing and commercial publishing, and then that led into the events world because that I felt was the next step.
Let me ask: did you go to Asia on your own? Did you know anyone there? Did anyone go with you? And how old were you at the time? Are we talking like
I was 20,
yeah,
and I went with my then French girlfriend, and we went backpacking. And then, after about 6 months of doing that around a lot of the Southeast Asian countries, we settled in Jakarta, which is quite an interesting place at that time. But I met a few journalists at a bar, as you do. Famously, the hotel around which the book and film A Year of Living Dangerously, and cut a long story short, ended up getting offered some work and decided to, okay, let's hang here for a bit and
right?
do some work. And that was me then. That was the start of a 16-year journey.
Amazing. So you took a sort of a punt, I guess, to go there. So there's a lesson there, isn't there? There's a lesson there. Sometimes you just got to throw yourself out there.
I thought, I've always believed in fortune favours the brave. And that's a kind of mantra I think I've probably always lived by through my personal life and subsequently through my business and professional life as well.
Sure.
And it kind of serves me well, I think. I'm still here. And so
talk to me about the journey then to within the events industry. As you said, you started to get more into the publishing field. Talk to me then how that developed further into.
I got into publishing and then started getting really irritated by the fact that the advertising sales guys were getting paid more than us writers and editors. And then I thought selling and understanding how to leverage audiences, how hard could that be? Ended up getting more and more interested in the relationship between audiences and content. And that was a natural progression then into, and I moved from magazines into newspaper publishing and worked for that joint venture of the New York Times and Washington Post in Asia, who produced the International Herald Tribune, and got more and more involved with the commercial side of publishing. So everything but the editorial, which is what I grew up on, but that is circulation, that is marketing, that is brand, that is advertising, and we started a conference division, and that was my first foray into events and understanding that content drives audiences and audiences can be leveraged. And conferences and events were really just a 3D version of what we were doing, what we've been doing for years in print and trade publishing, and found that, having been a bit of a Amdram participant, I quite liked the idea of it. It was a bit of show business as well, as you brought events to life. And all those mix of ingredients sat really well with me, and I think played to my skills. And I've completely loved the events business, all the while understanding, how print and that relationship between audiences and content can be very powerful.
And so you spent a number of years at Penton Media, and that then led you to Ithaca. And if I'm not mistaken, was that when you first met Andy Center and others?
Yeah. So I moved when I left the International Herald Tribune. I was headhunted by a guy out of the US called Alan Meckler, who started the Internet World trade show brand. And I kind of built a number of shows in Asia under the Internet World banner, which was very rapidly acquired by Penton. At the same time, Andy Center and Phil Nelson were working for Index Exhibitions in London. And about 4 months after Meckler Media, who I was working for in Asia, was acquired by Penton, Index in London was acquired by Penton. And so I first started meeting Andy at international management meetings. We both had the same boss, in the States with Penton. And then we would get together for management meetings, and Phil Nelson was there as well. And then at a point in 2003, this was the outbreak of SARS in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, I wanted to come home. I'd been 16 years away. I'd been away too long and felt that I really, really wanted to be home. And I remember ringing Andy to say, by the way, I've just given my notice to Dave Nussbaum. I've given him 6 months. I'm going to find a replacement. I'm heading back. And he said, mate, come and talk to me. I've got an idea, and come and work in the business with me, and let's do something. And I've got someone I want you to meet. And that, of course, was Phil Soar.
Right.
And of course, the plan was a management buyout, and which is ultimately what we executed in 2005. That was Phil Soar, Phil Nelson, Andy Centre, myself. We executed the MBO, so Penton became Ithaca. We ran that, had a great run with Ithaca for 28 months, I think it was, and sold that to UBM. And then we were all placed on gardening leave for about 6 months. And in that 6 months, we hatched the plan for CloserStill. And that was around 2008.
And let's talk about that. So you had just spent the best part of 3 years with the plans that you did with Ithaca. And then you sort of hatched this plan. And I'm just sort of thinking forward now, we're speaking almost 20 years later, 15, 16 years later. And look what CloserStill has become. Talk to me about the original plan. How much thought went into it, where you thought you could take it, what you wanted to start with. I'm interested in the beginning of that journey. If you can think back to maybe the first.
I can think back very carefully to it. So in order to execute the MBO with Ithaca, we were trying to figure out, how do we raise the money to do that? And it was Phil Soar that brought to us the whole concept of working with private equity.
Right.
As you might imagine, you might have a sense of kind of politics that the three of us followed. The private equity was literally the last people we would ever contemplate working with. But we're convinced otherwise, that actually private equity is just there to provide capital for growth. And so the whole concept of a buy and build seemed really, really attractive to us. And so our private equity partners that sponsored the MBO said to us, let's go again. We only did this for 28 months and look what happened. Had full confidence in the way we think about conceiving new events, how we think about markets we want to work in. And so they said, let's go again. And here's a bunch of capital that you've got access to. Let's build a business. And of course, this was during the financial crisis. So the wheels had come off the global economy in 2009. And so, and also we were big subscribers we felt that the traditional exhibition or trade show model, we felt that there was room for disruption and putting content at the front of the audience proposition. And so, and in the time of a financial crisis, we felt that we needed to look for safe havens. So we felt that if we focused on a few sectors that were probably resilient, not cyclical, where perhaps content, education, and learning was a big driver for audiences, that's the route we should go. And that's where we focus. We arrived at a point where we wanted to focus almost exclusively on healthcare and enterprise technology, business technologies. Because obviously, having been with Internet World and everything else, we felt really comfortable in very fast-moving tech markets. And so that was where we landed, really.
Yeah. And what gave you I know you'd worked with them for the past 2 or 3 years. What gave you the confidence that yourself, Andy, Phil Nelson, Phil Soar were the people that you wanted to partner up with? And what gave you the confidence between all of you that you thought that was the right mix of individuals?
Well, that's a really, really interesting question. I think that's been the secret of success. You could not have three more different individuals We all bring completely different skills, mindsets, or skills to the table. But that Venn diagram, the bit where we overlap, is the thing I think is fundamental. We're winners. We hate losing. We want to win.
Yeah.
And when it comes to transparency, integrity, honesty, you can't put a piece of paper between us. Huge respect for Phil and Andy, fierce intellects. We see things very clearly. We were able to align and make decisions really, really quickly on stuff that would make a big difference for the business. And then the other key fundamental was the model, which was the shared ownership model, where we would share the business with staff. And we felt that was we realized that we couldn't do this alone. We needed to build the business with our colleagues, and we wanted to share in that ownership model with them.
Let's talk about that for a minute, actually, because that's not typical, and I don't think it's ever been done in the industry since, or not in this fashion anyway. Why was it important for the three of you to go down that route, for staff to have a sense of ownership? Talk to me about that decision to give people real equity in the business.
Well, we were in a hurry. And if you want to be close to your markets and you want to empower your staff and you want to move quickly, you need to operate a really flat structure. If you want to operate a really flat structure, people need to feel that they have the authority and the accountability at the same time. And I think the three of us would admit that we weren't really interested in managing a big, complicated hierarchy structure. We're not those kind of people. We're more the sergeants in the trenches and fix our bayonets and go over the top and lead from the trenches rather than being the generals on the hill. And I felt that if you're going to take people over the top with you, that you need to be completely aligned. And we felt that kind of flat structure allowed us to go further, faster with our people, that they felt empowered and that we were all aligned in our goals. And so there wasn't anyone in the early days CloserStill with a made up job title, or there wasn't much paper pushing going around. It allowed us to stay lean and really close to the front of our markets, whether it's for our audiences or whether it's our exhibitors or sponsors.
Sure. Obviously, I guess there have been many, highlights, pinch me moments during your time at CloserStill. I guess there still are. Can you sort of bring one or two of those to life, whether it's the early days or even more recently? I think, wow, look what we've achieved here, whether it could be an individual show or an acquisition or whatever. I'm interested to know.
The whole journey of CloserStill has been extraordinary, and a series of pinch me moments. I think that we're fairly humble guys, actually, and still to this day can't quite believe we've got where we've got to.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? We've had our head down for so long, running so fast, that it's only when people tap us on the shoulder going, do you realise what kind of has happened here? And I think our real response is, well, sorry, no, we've just had our heads down being busy. I think, Dan, there's been so much. It's been 15 years. There's been so much that's happened. I think for me, I derive satisfaction. I don't really derive tons of satisfaction from things like awards or any of that kind of public recognition stuff. The stuff that excites me when I realise that, wow, look at what we're doing is, I was invited to the opening day of our graduate programme a couple of years ago and stood up in front of 25, 30 bright-eyed, bushy-tailed grads and sort of told our story and saw their reaction. And that felt quite a moment, that we created something that young people entering our world aspire to kind of work in. That felt quite a moment. I had a moment probably quite recently, actually, when I walked into our new amazing headquarters in Hammersmith. That took my breath away, because that was it's an incredible, amazing office, and to think how far we'd come, that's been an amazing moment. I did have one moment when it was one of an acquisition that we made, I think in 2018, of a show in Las Vegas, and I turned up in Las Vegas. I hadn't been there very often, and there was a bloke in a suit with my name on a sign at the airport. I thought, okay, maybe it's just a hotel. Anyway, so I got in this. He took me to this preposterously long limousine. I'd never been in one of those crazy limousines. Got taken to the Mirage Hotel, which is where our show was. We just acquired it. And then got shown to this equally preposterous room where those white lions that are in that show were in the garden. Anyway, this whole thing was completely bonkers. And I got down to the show floor and to our new partners, going, what's all that about? And they said, well, you're in Vegas now, and we have the whole hotel. This is probably worth $25 million in room nights and revenue to the casino. So they're giving you the high roller treatment. And that's what that was all about. And that, welcome to America and welcome to Vegas. And I remember texting Andy going, I've just had the most ridiculous, preposterous experience arriving here in Las Vegas. And that was a bit of only because it was a bit fun and completely, frankly, ridiculous, but a bit of a moment going, okay, so this is another milestone, I guess, in our journey.
Sure.
Dan, it's probably a really unsatisfactory
answer
for you.
It's your truth.
It's so many moments along the way, and I probably should have thought of a few more meaningful ones.
Tell me, Michael, you've referenced Andy there. For those that aren't aware, Andy Center, he obviously passed away. I think it's 2018 now.
Yeah.
Let's just spend a couple of minutes. Tell me about what he was like as an individual, both to work with and on a personal level, for people that aren't aware of the impact that he had on CloserStill and the industry, I guess.
Yeah. Those that know Andy well will probably agree when I say that he's a complete one-off. I've never met anyone quite like him. A fierce intellect, a man of integrity, and really principled. In some ways that restricted him, because he was probably a little bit intolerant if he felt that people weren't aligned with his view of the world. But he, believe it or not, he was quite humble, which belied his maybe quite big personality. But he was very humble. He was extremely honest, and one of the more generous people you could ever wish to meet.
Cool. Thank you.
And I think from the way that he thought about talking to markets, particularly audiences, his big strength was around marketing. He was a real trailblazer when he started his career at Reed, a bit of a maverick, and he wasn't going to last very long there, because I think he challenged too much conventional wisdom on how exhibition marketing should be done.
Yeah.
But no, he's an incredible human being, and he's very sadly missed.
Sure. Just want to talk about the B2B events industry, because obviously CloserStill organise B2B trade shows and exhibitions around the world. And you've been involved, obviously, for almost 2 decades. How do you think the industry has evolved over the years, just to start off with? Because at the moment, I talk to lots of people, and there seems to be an evolution going on in terms of experiential. We've got other, newer generations coming to events, so their expectations are slightly different maybe to before. Talk to me about what you've seen over the years and sort of where we're at now.
Yeah, I think our experience is limited only to the B2B world, so I wouldn't insult anyone's intelligence by talking meaningfully about the B2C event world. But B2B, I think what we've had is, I think there's been probably quite a lot of evolution in the last sort of 10 years, I'd say, 10, 15 years, where what I would say that the traditional kind of box moving, cookie cutter, exhibition led value proposition, I think that's still got its place, clearly. And you look no further than Germany to see that there are still monster shows that have that traditional format. But I think media companies and the event industry has become a lot smarter about how they talk to different sectors and different job functions within those sectors. And so what you're seeing, and you'll see this with CloserStill's business as well, is that there's a keener understanding of audience development, and therefore how to format events to talk to and to find where that buying power resides within those sectors. And so what you're seeing now is a lot of more versatility in event formats. So you can go from the humongous traditional trade fair, and then you'll see a lot of different types of formats and certain events becoming a lot more intimate. So where there is a consolidation of buying power in a particular vertical, in a particular industry, or on a key topic, if the buying power is concentrated or is consolidated, that's given rise to a lot of more intimate format events. You're seeing the rise of very, very successful, very valuable businesses that focus on hosted buyer programs, one-to-one meetings, or very much smaller gatherings. The other thing I think has changed is the use of content and activations. So, I'd say 15 years ago, I'd say that CloserStill, particularly in the UK, has probably blazed a bit of a trail there, where you could argue that what we've done is really disrupted the conference market rather than the exhibitions world by blending and fusing the two and placing content at the heart of the show rather than on the periphery or in another building, and on the basis that relevant, practical learning, which is an audience driver, then frames context for buying decisions and creates an environment that fosters better, more informed and high quality engagements between the exhibitors and sponsors and the audience. And I feel that that's probably been the big change that I've seen, that increasingly events understand the need to inform and educate the audiences as opposed to just seeing purely as buyers and making the job really hard for them. And so I think you're seeing a lot of innovation in formatting, a lot of versatility in the types of events that are run to suit the needs of that particular market, and then a keener understanding of where buying power resides within a particular vertical or a particular industry.
Sure. Thank you. I just want to turn quickly to mergers and acquisitions, because you referenced earlier that that's been more of your recent role, CloserStill. And it doesn't seem to be a day that goes by where we're not reading about an acquisition in the trade show and exhibition world at the moment, whether it's CloserStill or any of the other companies in the space. Talk to me about acquisitions, I guess how you target, what you look for in a company, and then once you've made the acquisition, how do you sort of make sure that it's a success, I guess?
Yeah, first and foremost, growth is, we're a company that's always looking for growth. And so we like to look first and foremost markets, attractive markets that have good fundamental drivers, that maybe there's a lot of disruption going on, whether it's structural disruption to that particular industry or technology impacted disruption or some regulatory changes. And so first and foremost, the served markets have got to have some fundamental growth drivers for us. And then we look at where a particular business or a particular events within the business or a particular standalone event, where it is in its life cycle. And we look at its potential for growth. That's one part. The other part for us is leadership. We always look for, and a typical CloserStill investment generally has a highly investable, quite entrepreneurial leadership team that we want to continue to carry the business forward. And so very typically with CloserStill, for example, how we thought about it is that most of the entrepreneurs and leaders of those businesses are still working in the family today. Give you one example, Mark Penton and our Learning Technologies, Mark and Ian from Learning Technologies, we made that deal with them in 2010. And 2020, 14 years later, they've now got a business that 6, 7, 8 times as big around the world and still loving it and still running it. And they're a very typical example, and that's what we look for. So we look for attractive markets, strong growth drivers, highly investable leaders, and some further growth potential in them, either geographically or some adjacencies.
The future for CloserStill, obviously there's been a pattern of, I guess, sales every few years. So sell to private equity. I think the last was in 2019, so it's been 5 years. Are you able to share with us sort of an idea of what the future holds?
CloserStill is, we don't ever really think of it as a sale. It's a recapitalization, and allows the investing partners to return a profit ultimately back to their funds. And I suspect that Providence is in a place that they've held CloserStill for quite a long time now, longer than normal probably. Yeah. But that's obviously, we know why, because we had COVID in the middle, and so it wouldn't surprise me if they're ready to exit their shareholding. At the point that they do that, that allows everyone that has shares in CloserStill to crystallize some value.
Sure.
And then we keep going. And remember, this has already happened 3 times. Here we go again. And that doesn't mean anything really changes at all. It allows people to crystallize some value. It will mean that there will be potentially a new majority shareholder. But remember, investors, they don't want to run your business. They back the management team and your plan.
Sure.
And we go again.
Sure. Thank you. So, Michael, I want to turn our attentions to more recent development in your career and life. You recently became the co-chair of Torquay United. So I've had Phil Soar on the show before, and he obviously back in the day was the chairman of Nottingham Forest. So maybe he's been advising you there as well. Talk to me about how this came about. I mean, are you sort of like the new Ryan Reynolds of Torquay? Are you going to try and do what they've done with Wrexham?
Yeah, I'm no Ryan Reynolds, as my wife would probably tell you. But look, I'm a local Torquay boy. So Torquay United, for everyone out there, is a lower league, non-league football team that gets, on a good day, 2,500 people going to it. But it was once a football league club and is 125 years old, and so there's history. It's probably the largest professional sporting club in South Devon, and a massive community asset with a lot of history. I've got a lot of personal history with the club. My dad was the stadium announcer there for 20 years. I've been taken there by my granddad since the age of 3. My dad's ashes are buried under the goal at the home end. I mean, Playmore was our family's happy place. Playmore is the name of the stadium, was our kind of family's happy place. And like many clubs at our level, football's a really difficult and tough environment. And frankly, it's the Ryan Reynolds of this world that have really helped ruin what's going on in lower league football, because community-run clubs who don't have access to multi-millionaire benefactors really struggle for loads of economic reasons. And so Torquay United went into administration because the then owners wanted to build houses. They wanted to use the football club as a property deal. And when it was clear that wasn't going to happen, they pulled the plug on the funding. And a few of us fans who, a lot of people that support Torquay don't live in Torquay. We grew up here because it was the English Riviera and it was an amazing place to live and get educated. But most of us left the area and gone on to do our thing. Russell Wilcox, by the way, who's chairman of Clarion, is a Torquay boy and a massive Torquay United fan. Right. So there are quite a few of us, even from our industry, that come from down here. But we couldn't see our club go under after 125 years. So I got a group together of Torquay fans or people that grew up with Torquay United that have gone on to be, reasonably successful in their business lives, and put a group together, put a consortium together that bought the club out of administration. And we've put a management team in place and sort of set it on a sustainable footing. And here we are, we survived, and looking forward to the season starting in a few weeks.
Amazing. And it's an amazing story about your father as well. Wasn't aware of that. So, your connection to the club obviously goes back, as you said. So it's a personal mission of yours, I guess, as well, to make sure, as you said, that it survives and thrives. So you've built up obviously a wealth of experience, predominantly within the sort of exhibition trade show space. How do you apply prior experiences from that industry to what people would perceive as completely
The
different?
football club.
Yeah.
There's a ton of parallels, actually. You take away the football side,
Sure.
the manager and the tactics and the players and all of that, but there are a ton of parallels. You step back and think of what a football club does. There are many elements to it. So for Torquay United, it's a collection of businesses. We are a hospitality business.
Right.
We're an events business. We're a match day operation. That's very similar to building a trade show.
Sure.
Security, cleaning. We are a retail business. And our fan base, our audience, our content is football. And so there are a lot of parallels in terms of our biggest revenue. What are our biggest revenue drivers in a football club? Subscriptions, meaning season ticket holders.
Yeah.
Audience revenue or ticket revenue, which is fans through the gate. Sponsorship, companies that put their names on the shirts or advertising around the ground. They want all the same return on investment and access to audiences as our sponsors at events do. The stadium itself is an event venue. So we run and host events, whether it's wedding receptions or birthday parties or wakes or corporate training days. We have a retail operation and we also have a charity. And so if you think about marketing, how you position your value proposition to different cohorts of your audiences, the football audience is quite broad. You've got children, you've got the older generations, and then you've got the families, and then you've got the youngsters. And so as you think about talking to those audiences and then connecting them with different sponsors, etc., there are a ton of parallels. And you can argue we put on a show 46 times or 23 times in a 9-month season.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similar disciplines and parallels to how you should think about doing that. That's been really useful.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I guess ultimately you're serving a community, right? So similar to
Correct.
trade show and exhibition, you're working out their needs, their desires. I guess you've done a lot of fan feedback forums. I'm assuming you've spoken to them, their concerns, what they want, what they're happy with, and not happy with. And I guess that's similar to when you're doing research with the audience at an event. Would that be the case?
100%.
Yeah.
And in fact, the first thing I wanted to do was do a fan survey and understand who are our fans and what do they want and how do they interact with the football club. And so I rang Mark Brewster at Explory and said, look, we've done this survey. Can you have a look at it? Do you think we're going to get the right responses for that?
Sure.
And then we put that out and got an enormous response, like crazy, like, I don't know, 1,500 responses or so. And it takes about 25 minutes to do this thing. That gave us so much information. And it told us that we had 4 cohorts of audiences and that they all want different things. And that's really driven how we are doing our marketing. The youngsters want to know more about the players, and the other different age groups want to know what the match day experience is going to be. Can I bring my kid? Is it going to be safe? Will the girls enjoy it? Etc. etc. So, a football club means different things to different parts of the community, and I think that what we've, as with our business with the event world, we need to understand really closely who our audiences are and what they want from the event, and in this case, what they want from the football club.
Sure. And what ultimately is... sorry to interrupt you. What ultimately is what's the vision for the club? And if you have had a message to the fans, and I'm sure you've put this out there since obviously you became co-chair, what's the aim?
We want to be sustainable, financially sustainable. That's goal number one. I've made that very clear to the fan base. Number two, we want to be really competitive on the pitch, but live within our means. And so I want us to perform probably better off the field to allow sustainability for the club. So then that means we can invest on the field.
Sure.
Our stated ambition is to get back into the English Football League. We're in tier 6, and to be in the English Football League, you need to be in tier 4. And so immediate goal is to get out of the National League South, which is where we are at the moment. We feel like we've resourced the club on the football side. We're performing ahead of plan on the commercial side. So let's hope we've hired the right manager and he's recruited the right players that we can get the results to get us out of this particular league this season. Then it's probably a longer battle because the conference, what people know as the conference, which is tier 5, is effectively the third division of the Football League now, because they're all but one club now are former Football League clubs with big crowds, and you need to run big budgets to be competitive to get out. So I think we're very realistic, but we stared into the abyss 9-10 weeks ago with the club nearly going under and into liquidation and ending a 125 years history. We've managed to obviously save the club from that, but we want to ensure that we're here for the foreseeable and be on a sustainable footing.
You enjoying it?
Loving it. Oh, come on. I mean, if you've been going to your football club, local football club, since you were 3, which in my case is over 50 years, and then in some cases it feels like the lunatics have taken over the asylum. But I've always felt like that anyway through my business career, that can't believe how lucky we are to be doing this. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that me and my consortium colleagues look at each other going, I can't believe we've got the opportunity to do this. And if you can't have fun doing this, you should be doing it. And so I'm absolutely loving the challenge of it, and being able to draw upon kind of experience I've built through the events industry that I think is helping.
Sure. Michael, as we sort of come to the end of the conversation, always interested to get my guests, especially esteemed guests like you that have had the career that you've had, to give us some sort of, I guess, lessons, maybe the wrong word, but just, musings on things that you think you can share with the audience that have resonated with you over the years. So anything you think that might be worthwhile, valuable lessons that you've learned that have stood you in good stead?
Trust your gut. Your initial instinct is usually always the right one. And that I could apply on different levels, but particularly when it comes to people and hiring people. Your first impression of someone within the first 2 or 3 minutes will tell you everything you need to know. Sure. And I think if I wouldn't be sat here today with the opportunity to save the football club and all of that good stuff, if CloserStill hadn't been as successful as it's been, and CloserStill would not been as successful as it's been if it wasn't for our judgment on people. Sure. That includes the original founders and our ability to work with each other and align, but most importantly, the way that we thought about recruiting people and then working with those people to get the best out of them. And that's always come from a gut. That's come from the gut. And that's probably my number one lesson is trust your gut, because you can rely on your own judgment.
Sure.
I think the other one is very quickly learn who you can learn from, and it might not be people that are higher up in the organisation or are that more senior. I've always felt that there are always people from whom you can learn, and they could be anywhere in the organisation and probably where you least expect it. The big one for me is that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in those proportions. And that comes to everything. That comes to selling, understanding customer needs. It comes to marketing, understanding audience needs, working with teams and staff, listen to what they want, what they need, listen to what they're telling you. I guess those are the main ones.
Sure.
For me, Dan. And what I also love, the final one is, what I love about our world of events particularly, is that there is success is directly proportionate to the effort that you put in. I've never known a sector or an industry like it. It really is a truism that the harder you work, the more successful you will be. And I'll leave it at that.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Could have spoken to you for a lot longer. I appreciate you're a busy man. We wish you the very best of luck with Torquay. Look forward to. I'm definitely now following it on social media. As I said before, when I looked at the player reveals, they're very, even someone that's a Chelsea fan, it's very endearing to see what's going on at your club. I know you've got people painting and the stadium and so on and so forth. So you can really sort of get that community feel. So congratulations on what you've achieved already. And again, look forward to seeing what's next on the horizon for CloserStill, and congratulations on all the various successes it's had to date.
It's been a pleasure. And Dan, you're welcome to play more anytime. Come down and see what lower league football's all about and what a real community asset's all about too.
I'd love to. Thank you.